Shabbat Shalom. Good morning. Welcome to our Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Umevorach. Shabbat Shalom. Umevorach. Mayafer hayom. Shabbat Shalom. Mayafer hayom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. 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 Umevorach. Shabbat Shalom. Umevorach. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.
Good morning, Shabbat Shalom. It's so nice to be praying with all of you this morning. We're going to take a second right now to just call out a couple of truths from today. This morning started out like the rest of this week has, and then in the middle of Steve singing Micha Mocha and skipping across the sea, or crab walking across the sea, or whatever was happening, phones started blowing up and alerts started coming in. The press has called that Biden is going to be the next president. Regardless of how you feel, this is a moment in history that we acknowledge. A new president is always a big moment and a big deal. I'm sure there will be lots of conversation and time to think and process what's happening out of this. And in our community, in this community, we know that there are all kinds of people with all kinds of views. Everyone is welcome. Our job today together is to pray together, to be together, even in our own homes, as always. So we're going to ask you to keep your political comments or your celebration or your mourning off of the comment section this morning. And our job this morning is to create holiness, to work to repair so much of what has happened over the last months and years in our country, and to bridge the divisiveness. That's the only way that we are going to move ourselves forward. And so with that acknowledgement, we know that you'll each pray with different ideas in your minds and hearts. We take the most needed, big, deep breath. As we begin our services this morning, it's a lot to hold. We can hold it together. as we begin our prayer. Every breath and every blink, every moment and every heartbeat, each one a blessing. This is a moment of blessing. Blessings given, blessings received. Every trail and every vista, every journey and every homecoming, each one an adventure. This is a moment of adventure. Adventures alone, adventures together. Every sunrise and every sunset, every crash of thunder, every roar of the sea, each one a moment of majesty. This is a moment of majesty. Majesty from heaven, majesty on earth. Every birth and every death, every love and every loss, each one a mystery. This is a moment of mystery. Mysteries hidden, mysteries revealed. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, God of blessings, God of adventures, God of majesty, and God of mystery. You fill our days with your glory and our lives with your precious gifts. Praised are you, source of love.
Lechaya.
begin, well, we continue, actually, because we've just said thank you for this place that we have together. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov, how good are these tents? This is not a tent, my house, but it is a good place, a safe place to be. I hope that we are all in safe places, that we have shelter from and community in, even virtually. And so we have said thank you for our spaces and for our community. And now we say thank you for our bodies. My body is a mystery, so strong, so fragile. It can suffer great pain, endure to reach triumph, but a small moment can bring collapse and death. My body is a mystery, a gift of intricacy and beauty, powerful, endowed with the ability to take light and air and food and make them into energy and action. What then is my life? How then will I use this gift? I will thank you for your kindness and abundance. I will treasure the moments of strength and vigor. I will surrender to the moments of weakness and distress. God, who provides sustenance and health, you are the source of life. Baruch atah Adonai rofecho basar umafli la'asot. Blessed are you, Adonai, who heals all flesh, working wondrously.
And we recognize that not only are we physical beings, we've awoken this morning and our bodies are working, but we are also spiritual beings. We've awoken this morning and God has restored our soul to us, a clean, fresh, pure soul to go out into the world and do good things. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. God, the soul that you have given me, that you have breathed into me, is a pure one. Elohai, Elohai, Neshama, Neshama, Shenatata bi, Shenatata bi, Tehorahi, Tehorahi. Take a big deep breath. Elohai, Elohai, Neshama, Neshama, Shenatata bi, Shenatata bi, Tehorahi, Tehorahi. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who has given the mind the ability to distinguish day from night. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who opens the eyes of the blind. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who frees the captive. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who lifts up the fallen. Elohai, Elohai, Neshama, Neshama, Shenatata bi, Shenatata bi, Tehorahi, Tehorahi. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who stretches the earth over the waters. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who strengthens our steps. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who clothes the naked. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who gives strength to the weary. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who removes sleep from the eyes, slumber from the eyelids. bi shenatata bi Tehorahi, Tehorahi Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who made me in the image of God. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who has made me free. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who has made me a Jew. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who girds Israel with strength. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who crowns Israel with splendor. Elohai, Elohai, Nishama, Nishama, Shenatata bi, Shenatata bi, Tehorahi, Tehorahi. These nisim b'chol yom, these blessings for everyday miracles, cause us to stop and to be aware, to open our eyes and to see the things that are happening around us. So I invite you to take a moment for your own personal blessing, to give thanks for something miraculous, something special, something important, something that you've witnessed in your own life in this past week that you are grateful for. I'll give you a couple of moments and then we'll come back together. Take one more big, deep inhale. Elohai, Elohai, Nishama, Nishama, Shenatata bi, Shenatata bi, Tehorahi, Tehorahi, Elohai, Elohai.
We have said thank you for our physical space and for our physical selves. We have said thank you for our spirits and our souls. And now we thank God for our minds, the ability to learn and to think. And so we begin with the blessing for Torah study. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to engage with words of Torah. And we arrive at day 6 of compassion and modesty. I think it's just modesty still. Every week we do that. We are at modesty. And we're working our way through this, and some of it is easier than others. Some of it is hard to wrap our minds around. And this is an interesting one. Let's read it. A young student asked permission to go to a wedding. Rabbi Eliyahu Lopian asked him if there might be women there dressed immodestly. The student replied that he had prepared a strategy. He wouldn't look. And the rabbi turned to the student and said, I am already over 80 years old and blind in one eye, and yet despite this, I look. Well, okay. This is an interesting one because it draws on so much of some of the pieces of these texts and some of the ideas that are hard to wrap our heads around. So I'm just going to take it on different levels in order. On a basic level, I think that this is hard. I think that this feeds into the objectifying of women's bodies and blah, blah, blah. Okay, you get what I'm saying there. And we're going to put that aside because that's not the intention of the text. It's the example used. So we're going to call it and we're going to set it aside. Here are some things that I'm noticing about it. The first thing that I'm noticing is actually, if you were in Torah study with us, we were talking about this week's Torah portion, Vayera, which means, and he appeared, or and he saw. And we talked a lot about every instance of that same root, to appear or to see, that happens in the entire Torah portion. And how often we came away with the idea that often what we see is not actually what's there. It was about vision and being able to open our eyes to see things differently, and the need that we often have for God or our community or our friends to help us open our eyes and see something different. So first of all, that's a really beautiful way to look at this. That not looking is a hard strategy, but perhaps we can learn to look and see something else. That modesty is about not taking what is material or what is surface, not focusing on those things, and being able to look deeper, right? And perhaps the rabbi is being really honest here. No matter what, no matter how old we are or how many working eyes or how bad our vision may be, we still look. It's human nature. And so our job is to figure out how to look differently, how to see differently. That is a lesson in modesty, how to help people see differently or see more deeply or see more genuinely. But the other thing that this makes me think of is that modest, when I think modest, I immediately think of either dress or ego, right? The opposite of modest is immodest, which is ego or hubris, right? And modest is humble. Okay, so there's another word that for me opens up some of the understanding of this, and that is decency. Decency. And we use that in the surface ways also, right? Are you decently dressed? And that doesn't just mean about what's covered, right? Am I decent for this? Also means like, am I appropriate? Am I wearing what is appropriate for something? And so perhaps if we move from the word modest to the word decent, to the word appropriate, it gives us a greater understanding of this moment. Decency is defined as behavior that is moral, which is really interesting. And so the idea behind this text by this particular rabbi says that when we confront a lack of decency, and let's not think about that in terms of clothing, but in terms of behavior, when we confront a lack of decency, we can't look away. It's not our nature to just stay in our own decent world and ignore what feels indecent, inappropriate, immoral. We watch. And I would venture to say that is so much of what has happened in our country in the last number of years. We can't help but watch when we have moments of immorality. We can't help but blow them up, but make them huge, but tune into them, make them news. Those moments of indecency, we look for them, we search for them, we exploit them. What would it mean if we asked ourselves, should I engage in this? I think there might be moments of indecent behavior. Should I go to this wedding? I think that it might be an invitation for me to exploit people who are not acting in a moral fashion. Because, as our rabbi says, 80 years old and blind in one eye, and we can't look away. So maybe he's right. We don't go to the wedding. We don't put ourselves as often as we can in situations where we get to deeply from our own homes and screens watch other people's indecency. What would it look like if we said no thank you to that news, to that story, to that tweet, whatever it may be? What if we said, that's not the right wedding for me? I'll do something else, because we recognize our own human nature. What an interesting way to think about moving forward in the world from today. Let's read our phrase and our practice. Wise privacy bestows dignity. And our practice. Whatever you may be tempted to flaunt, whether body, ideas, wealth, or any other gift, keep it hidden. Things to think about. Let us say our closing text for the study of Torah. O Adonai, our God, let the words of Torah be sweet in our mouths, in the mouths of your people Israel, so that we, our descendants, and the descendants of all your people Israel may know you by studying your Torah for its own sake. Baruch atah Adonai, hamelamed Torah le'amo Yisrael. Blessed are you, Adonai, who teaches Torah to your people Israel.
You to rise, either physically or spiritually, as we join together in the Baruch Hu, our call to worship. Ya la 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 la, ya la la la. Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Ya la 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 la, 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 ya la 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 la. Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam va'ed, Le'olam va'ed. Ya la 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 la, 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 ya la 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 la.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzer or uvarei choshech, oseh shalom uvarei et hakol. You are praised, who rolls out the rough, raw clay of the universe into delicate vessels of light, and from nothing at all could perceive in a world that has turned old, a shimmering new creation right before our eyes, made this moment just for us. How much of life reveals your presence? How much Torah unfolds from each new flower, from each new wave that breaks upon the sea. You are praised, who forms from the clay that cloaks our lives the delicate vessels which contain our light. Baruch atah Adonai Yotzer HaMeorot. Praised are you, Adonai, creator of all heavenly lights. And we prepare for the Shema and the Ve'ahavta, our words of love for God. Love abundant, love unstinting, our God, you have enfolded us in love. Tender compassion beyond all bounds, your precious gift. Our fathers and mothers gave you their trust, and you gave them Torah, laws by which to live. For their sake, teach us as well. Grace us with your guidance. Loving Father, merciful Mother of us all, grant us clear understanding that we may listen, learn, and teach, preserve, practice, and fulfill with love every lesson of your Torah. May learning your Torah light up our eyes. May our hearts embrace your mitzvot. Unite us in love and reverence for you, that we may never feel ashamed of our deeds. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher ba'amo Yisrael ba'ahava. Our praise to you, Adonai, you have singled out your people Israel with love.
Open up our eyes, teach us how to live, fill our hearts with joy and all the love you have to give. Gather us in peace as you lead us to your name, and we will know that you are one, and we will know that you are Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Love your God with all your heart, with all your strength, with all your soul. Love your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul. Where you live, where you lie, where you stumble, where you thrive, with all you speak, with all you know, with all your soul. Be like God, one like God, in love and life. Be like God, love like God, with all your heart, with all your might, with all your soul. When you speak, when you soar, when you breathe and breathe no more, love your God, be with God, go with God. Love your God with all your heart, with all your strength, with all your soul. Be with God, one like God. Go with God, be with God, one with God. Go like God.
Majestic sovereign, source of awe and wonder, when did you decide to make daily miracles so simple, so gentle, so quiet, and so small? Did our fear of your voice echoing from the mountaintop push you away? Or was this your plan all along? To show us your glory in fire and smoke, in the parted sea, in the darkness and in the light, and then to draw away so that we would yearn for you to be near, so that we would yearn for your power and might, for your holiness, and for your salvation? Or are you waiting patiently to return again with signs and with wonders?
Adonai, mi kamocha, nedar bakodesh, Dora tehilot, o sepele, Dora tehilot, o sepele. Who is like you, Adonai? Like you, Adonai. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, Nora tehilot, o sepele, Nora tehilot, o sepele. Ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la.
Rock of Israel, rise in support of Israel and redeem Judah and Israel as you promised. Our Redeemer, Adonai Tzevaot is your name. Blessed are you, Adonai, for redeeming Israel. Baruch atah Adonai Ga'al Yisrael. There is a chain of both unimaginable delicacy and infinite strength, bound 13 times from head to heart to hands to you. It stretches further back than time until it reaches those who first cried out your name. I see them in the mirror, hear their voices in the night, feel their joy, and taste what they found bitter as if it were iron on my tongue. Together we are whole. Together we remember. And so we sing your praises.
We rise either physically or spiritually for the tefillah. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Open up my lips and let my mouth declare your praises. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Koneh HaKol, V'Zocher Chastei Avot ve'Imahot, U'Mevi Geula Livnei v'Nehem, L'Ma'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'Ezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechaye HaKol Atah Rav Lehoshia, Mashiv HaRuach U'Morid HaGashem, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechaye HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim V'Rofech Olim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishene Afar, Michamocha Baal Gevurot, Umido Melach, Melech Memit Umechaye, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah lehachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechaye hakol. Nikadesh et shimcha ba'olam, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש קדוש קדוש, אדוני צבאות, Adirenu Adonai, Adonenu Ma'adir, Shimcha b'chol haaretz, Baruch kivod Adonai, Bimkomo. Echadu Eloheinu, Hu Avinu, Hu Malkeinu, Hu Moshiach, Kedushatcha nagdish, Kedushatcha nagdish, V'shimchacha Eloheinu mipinu lo yamush, Le'olam le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh.
We take a moment now for the prayers that are in our hearts and minds before we come back together for our prayer for peace.
Ose shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Ose shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Ose shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ose shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Ose shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Ose shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ose shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. And so we arrive at Seder Kriyat HaTorah, the service for the reading of the Torah. I need to catch my breath here for a moment. And it's my honor and privilege to get to give the Devar Torah this morning. And I couldn't have asked for a better Torah portion to learn about and teach about. This week's portion, Vayera, is almost an embarrassment of riches. It's a treasure trove of wonderful stories, big important moments in the story of our people. And if you joined us earlier for Torah study, you already have an idea of what some of them are, but we'll just go through quickly. Right at the beginning of the Torah portion, Abraham welcomes 3 travelers to his tent and sets up for us as Jews the highest example of the value of Hachnasat Orchim, welcoming the stranger. These messengers tell Abraham and Sarah that they will finally have a child. Sarah, who is 90 years old, the text, in fact, tells us that the way of women had ceased for Sarah. Sarah laughs at this, and the Hebrew word that's used in the text is vatitzchak, which later, of course, informs the name of her child to be Yitzchak. The messengers get up to leave on their way to the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah to do a little reconnaissance work for God, to see just how wicked things are down there and if the cities really deserve to be destroyed. God wonders aloud to God's self whether or not to hide this plan to destroy the cities from Abraham. Cliffhanger. We'll come back to this in a few moments. And this is just the first few lines of the Parashat, the first few verses. There's some big drama when Abimelech, the king of Gerar, kidnaps Sarah. But don't worry, Abraham gets her back along with a whole ton of loot. making Abraham a very wealthy man. Then Isaac Yitzchak is born. Remember the prophecy of the three messengers. And Abraham circumcises him, bringing him into the covenant. And now that Sarah has a child of her own, she doesn't want Ishmael, the son of Abraham and Sarah's slave Hagar, to share in Abraham's inheritance. So she makes Abraham throw Hagar and Ishmael out. Of course, Ishmael goes on to be the father of a great people and is recognized as a prophet and patriarch of Islam. There's a little more drama with Abimelech over the digging of a well, but with some deft negotiations and 7 lambs, they settle things amicably. And then we come to one of the best known stories in the entire Bible. God puts Abraham to a test, telling him to take his son, his only one, the one he loves, Isaac, and to offer him up as a burnt offering on top of a nearby mountain. This is a difficult and troubling story, and perhaps the one incident that has inspired more commentary and debate than any other biblical tale. But this is not what I want to talk about this morning. There's plenty of other times during the year where we talk about the binding of Isaac. Suffice it to say that in a highly dramatic and very climactic moment, God intervenes and Isaac is saved. We could spend weeks and months and years dissecting this story and wrestling with the notion of Abraham being tested by God, of Abraham's seemingly blind willingness to make this ultimate sacrifice, and on and on. We could choose any of these stories from this wildly dramatic Parashat and spend days or weeks digging into them. But instead, I want to go back to the part where Abraham argues with God, and I want to frame it in the context of an arc of events that we've been reading in these early chapters of Genesis. Some of you know that one of my go-to sources for interesting Torah commentary is Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, a modern Orthodox rabbi who served for 22 years as the chief rabbi of the United Hebrew Congregations of the British Commonwealth. Lord Rabbi Sacks is an incredibly prolific author, biblical scholar, commentator, and public speaker. He's won more prestigious awards than you can possibly imagine. And he was knighted by Queen Elizabeth in 2005, hence the title Lord. He's a life peer in the House of Lords in England. And he's also just a really cool guy. His writing is smart, but not overly scholarly. And he has a way of explaining things in simple language that I find really accessible. He also has an amazing English accent, and on his website you can find audio recordings of his weekly Torah commentaries, which are awesome to listen to. And his voice reminds me a little bit of that guy that narrates the Harry Potter books. Anyway, Rabbi Sacks suggests that there is a thread that weaves through each Torah portion, beginning with Bereshit at the beginning of the Torah, the beginning of Genesis. And this theme, and Rabbi Sacks suggests that this may be the key theme of the book of Genesis, is the notion of responsibility and how humans must learn, often the hard way, to handle various kinds of responsibility. He writes that in Parashat Bereshit, Adam and Eve lack personal responsibility. When confronted by God about why he ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, Adam says, "It wasn't me, the woman made me do it." Avoids responsibility. Eve then says, "It wasn't me, the serpent talked me into it." As immature humans, they do not yet understand either freedom or the personal responsibility that comes along with it. A little later, when Cain is confronted by God after murdering his brother Abel, Cain doesn't deny personal responsibility. He doesn't say, "I didn't do it, it wasn't me," or "it was Abel's fault for provoking me." Instead, Cain denies moral responsibility. "How should I know where Cain is? Am I my brother's keeper? I'm not responsible for him." And then sometime later, Noah fails the test of collective responsibility. He is a man of virtue in an age of vice, but he makes no impact on his contemporaries. He saves his family and all the animals, but no one else. And according to the plain reading of the text, Noah doesn't even try. And then we come to Abraham. From our earliest meeting of him, Abraham understands and exercises personal responsibility. In Parashat Lech Lecha, a quarrel breaks out between Abraham's herdsmen and those of his nephew Lot. Seeing that this was not a random occurrence, but the result of too many cattle trying to graze in too small an area, Abraham immediately proposes a solution. He says to Lot, "Let there not be a quarrel between you and me, or between your herders and mine, for we are brothers. Is not the whole land before you? Let's part company. If you go to the left, I will go to the right. If you go to the right, I will go to the left." Abraham passes no judgment. He doesn't ask whose fault the argument was. He doesn't blame anyone. He doesn't even ask who will gain from any particular outcome. He gives Lot the choice. He sees the problem and he acts, and he finds a solution where everyone wins and no one loses. In the next chapter of Bereshit, we're told about a local war in which Lot, again Abraham's nephew, is among the people taken captive. Immediately, Abraham gathers a force, pursues the invaders, rescues Lot, and with him all the other captives. He returns these captives safely to their homes and refuses to take any of the spoils of victory that he is offered by the grateful king of Sodom. In contrast to the story of Cain, Abraham understands implicitly that he is his brother's keeper, or in this case, his brother's son's keeper. He immediately understands the nature of his moral responsibility to act, to do the right thing here. And despite the fact that Lot made a choice to live in this wicked town, along with all the risks that involved, Abraham does not say he's on his own. His safety is his responsibility, not mine. Then, in this week's Parashat Vayera comes this great moment when Abraham, a mere human being, challenges God for the very first time. As I mentioned before, God is about to pass judgment on Sodom and Gomorrah and wonders whether or not to let Abraham in on this plan or to keep it a secret. Ultimately, God spills the beans, but Abraham doesn't take it too well, and he confronts God. Will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? What if there are 50 righteous people in the city? Will you really sweep it away and not spare the place for the sake of the 50 righteous people in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to kill the righteous with the wicked, treating the righteous and the wicked alike. Far be it from you. Will not the judge of all the earth do justice? God agrees. Okay, if there are 50 innocent people in Sodom, I will spare the city. And then, in an amazing and somewhat audacious act, Abraham bargains with God. Abraham talks God down from 50 to 45 people, to 40 people, to 30 people, to 20 people, and finally to 10. He gets God to agree that if just 10 righteous people can be found in Sodom, God will spare the city. Imagine this human being arguing, challenging God, right to God's face. By what right does a human being have? What right does a human being have to challenge God like this? Well, again, so much commentary here, but Rabbi suggests that God wanted Abraham to challenge God. The text tells us, God says, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do?" And then sort of thinking out loud, Abraham will surely become a great and powerful nation, and all nations on earth will be blessed through him. Then God said, "The outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great and their sins so grievous that I will go down and see if what they have done is as bad as the outcry that has reached me." Those words, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do?" are a clear hint, according to Rabbi Sachs, that God wants Abraham to respond. Otherwise, why would God have said them? We don't ask a question unless we want an answer. The story of Abraham can be further understood against the backdrop of the story of Noah. There too, God tells Noah in advance that he was about to bring punishment to the world. God said to Noah, "I'm going to put an end to all people for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I'm surely going to destroy both them and the earth. Noah hears this, does not protest, does not argue. To the contrary, we are told 3 times that Noah did as God commanded him. Noah accepted God's verdict. Abraham challenged it. Abraham understood the principle of responsibility that we have been building toward in these successive episodes, the idea of collective responsibility. The people of Sodom were not Abraham's brothers and sisters, so in standing up for them, he was going beyond even what he did in rescuing his nephew Lot. He argues with God on their behalf because he understands the idea of human solidarity, human interconnectedness. As English poet John Donne famously wrote, "No man is an island entire of himself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. Any man's death diminishes me, for I am involved in mankind." And Abraham implicitly understands this interconnectedness between people and his collective responsibility for all people. God and Abraham have entered into a covenant, an agreement, a partnership. They are building a relationship. They're learning how to interact with one another. They're developing trust. God is exploring this partnership with Abraham, asking his opinion, perhaps seeking approval for what God was planning to do, or perhaps God wants Abraham to challenge God, to help God think through the consequences of these actions, to help God to find the righteous path. Abraham, too, is exploring his limits, pushing his boundaries, feeling out how God will respond, learning what kind of partnership God wants of him. Abraham is growing into his role as the leader and initiator of a new faith, one that would not simply accept the status quo, but challenge it. Rabbi Sachs writes that Abraham had to have the courage to challenge God if his descendants were to challenge human rulers later on, as Moses and the prophets would do. Jews do not accept the world that is. We challenge it in the name of the world that ought to be. This is a critical turning point in human history, the birth of the world's first religion of protest, the emergence of a faith that challenges the world instead of simply accepting it. Abraham was not a conventional leader. He did not rule a nation. There was as yet no nation for him to lead, but he was the role model of leadership as Judaism understands it. He took responsibility. He acted. He didn't wait for others to act. Of Noah, the Torah says he walked with God, but to Abraham, God says, "Walk before me," meaning be a leader. Walk ahead, take personal responsibility, take moral responsibility, take collective responsibility. Judaism is God's call to responsibility. And in these challenging times, may we all find the strength to take moral responsibility, to take personal responsibility, to take collective responsibility, and to follow the example of Abraham and answer God's call. We are honored to have a number of guests, a number of congregants joining us for our Torah service this morning. At 9 o'clock this morning, Sawyer Davidow became bat mitzvah, and we welcome her father Seth and Sawyer and her mom Allison to bless the Torah before we read from Torah. Then we're very excited to invite Rachel Wagner to chant from the book of Genesis, this story of the negotiation between God and Abraham for us this morning. Following that, a member of our Board of Trustees, Wendy Nekritz, will read the translation of the Torah portion. And then for our post-Torah blessing, we welcome Laura and Frank Nuttall in honor of their daughter Izzy, who is becoming a bat mitzvah right at this very moment. So here we go with our Torah service.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamvorach. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'Torah.
Amen. Vayakumu misham ha'anashim, vayashkifu al pnei Sedom, ve'Avraham holech imam leshalcham. Ve'Adonai amar, hamechase ani me'Avraham, asher ani oseh. Ve'Avraham hayo yeh, legoy gadol ve'atzum, ve'nivrechu vo kol goyei haaretz, ki yedativ leman asher yetzaveh et banav vayet beito acharav, ve'shamru derech Adonai la'asot tzedakah u'mishpat leman havi Adonai al Avraham et asher diber alav. Vayomer Adonai za'akad Sedom va'amora ki rabah, v'chatatam ki chavda me'od. Erdana ve'ere haketzagata, haba elai asu kala, ve'im lo eda. Vayifnu misham ha'anashim, vayelchu Sedoma, ve'Avraham odenu omed lifnei Adonai. Vayigash Avraham vayomar, ha'av tisbeh tzadik im rasha. Ulai yesh hamishim tzadikim betoch ha'ir, ha'av tisbeh velo tisa lamakom, leman hamishim hatzadikim asher bekirba. Chalila lach me'asot kadavar hazeh, lehamid tzadik im rasha. Adonai hatzadik karasha. Chalila lach hashofet kol haaretz lo ya'aseh mishpat. Vayomer Adonai im emtza visdom, hamishim tzadikim betoch ha'ir, v'nasati lechol hamakom ba'avuram.
The men went up from there and gazed down upon Sodom, Abraham going along with them to send them off. The Eternal then thought, should I hide from Abraham what I am doing? Yet Abraham is certain to become a great and populous nation, and through him all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. For I have selected him so that he may teach his children and those who come after him to keep the way of the Eternal, doing what is right and just, so that the Eternal may fulfill for Abraham all that has been promised him. The Eternal One then said, the outcry in Sodom and Gomorrah, how great it is, and their crime, how grave it is. Let me go down and determine whether they are wreaking havoc in equal measure to the shrieking that is coming to me. If not, I will know. The men now turned away and went toward Sodom, while Abraham remained standing before the Eternal. Abraham then came forward and said, will you indeed sweep away the innocent along with the wicked? Suppose there are 50 innocent in the city. Will you indeed sweep away the place and not spare it for the sake of 50 innocent who are in its midst? Far be it from you to do such a thing, killing innocent and wicked alike, so that the innocent and the wicked suffer the same fate. Far be it from you. Must not the judge of all the earth do justly? The Eternal One said, if I find 50 innocent people in Sodom, I will pardon the whole place for their sake.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'hayei olam navta b'tochenu, Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Thank you to everybody that participated in our service. What beautiful Torah reading and Torah blessing. And Steve, an excellent Drash. I love learning from you. It's such a pleasure when we switch up our jobs a little bit and I get to spend a little time learning and what learning we did. So thank you.
So next week you can lead all the music. How's that?
Yeah, great. I will learn to play the guitar before then. We take a moment now for the Mishaberach, for our prayer for healing. And I'll tell you, this morning I lost track a little bit of the fact that we are still in the midst of a really, really hard time, and that so many are sick, that our pandemic has taken a turn for the worse, and that more and more are testing positive, and I think we're gonna see a lot of change coming around that as well in the next few weeks. And so for a second, we just turn our minds there towards those who need healing, towards those who are sick in our own congregation, in our own cities and communities, and certainly in the rest of the world. We spend a moment praying hard for their healing and for the safety and security of everyone. As usual, in between our verses, we take a moment to say the names out loud of those who need our prayers.
El na rifana lanu. El na rifana lanu. Dear God of our ancestors, help us renew our faith. Grant us a perfect healing. Bring peace to all our days. Restore our strength of body. Help clarify our minds. Refresh our tired spirits. Rejuvenate our lives.
Today we are praying for Zachary Hoffman, David Karner, David Lustig, Natalie Mosier, Corey Franklin, Jeff Cohn, David Goldenberg, Stuart Myers, Jerry Butter, Michael Rose, Catherine Plus, Vicki Adams, Jean Silber, Scott Grant, David Horowitz, Michelle Handler, Violet Franks, Roger Simon, Phyllis Schuldberg Johnson, Shanti Hazan, Robert Tucker, Jennifer Brynan, Lynn Pollitt, Lynn McLaughlin Cromar, Cynthia Friedland, Dana Huss, Betsy Appel, Robin Huss, Devorah Miriam Bat Yehudit, Joanne Wilner Potts, Howard Rosenberg, Glenn Richardson, Leonard Streer, Deborah Elena Koff, and Bev Rouleau. If there are others for whom you are praying today and you haven't yet typed them in, feel free to do so. Say them out loud so that we can all pray with you. Baruch atah Adonai makor harefuah. Blessed are you, Adonai, the source of all healing.
Thank you for all these blessings throughout our days and nights. We celebrate the journey, the precious gift of life. And now, as we move toward the conclusion of our service, I invite you to rise, either physically or spiritually, and join together in Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon hakol, lateit gedula liotzer bereshit, shelo asanu kegoye haratzot, velo samanu כמשפחות האדמה שלא שם חלקנו כהם וגורלנו ככל המונם ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך
Our thoughts now turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. And on this Shabbat, we are remembering those that we have lost in this past week, Rocky Brown and D. Rosenblum Paul, those who have died in the last 30 days, Sheldon Levy, Tracy Schimmel, Thelma Teitelbaum, and Arlene Wedgell, and those for whom this Shabbat marks their yortzeit, or the anniversary of their death in years past. Susan Allison, Rose Baskin, Joseph Berenbaum, Sam B. Cohen, Maurice Colton, Sam Davidson, Morris Dreyfus, Sarah Fine Silver, Robert Friedman, Jack H. Friedman, Samuel M. Friedman, Joseph H. Garrell, Joseph Goldstone, Samuel Arnold Goodman, Selma Fist Grauman, Sophie Frumis Goldberg, Lisbeth C. Gross, Isidore I. Hassenbusch, Esther R. Hirschfeld, Sheila K. Hyatt, Samuel Michael Hyman, Molly Isco, Howard Jacobs, Jerry Jacobs, Robert Jacobs, Harriet Joseph, Terry R. Durst, Bess Katchen, Abram Kaufman, Ethel Kurtz, Louis Langer, Albert Lewin, Sylvia K. Lieberman, Ruth Schwader Luby, Eli Milstein, Marvin Mintz, Marjorie Joy Paller, Abe David Penn, Jack H. Perlmutter, Julia Pillersdorf, Rosa Cohn Rinskoff, Samuel Rose, Arthur J. Sanders, Lawrence Sandler, Nanette L. Schaefer, Joseph J. Schiffer, Ruth Betty Schoen, Anna Schreiber, Molly K. Schwartz, Rachel N. Schwartz, Sam Schwartz, Sadie Lubby Scribner, Beatrice Seaman, Ray Schendelman, Nathan Seiden, Marie K. Silverman, Lee Simmons, Elizabeth Fine Stryker, Sammy Sugarman, Helen M. Sussman, Rose Wiener, and Fanny Weintraub. And we add to that list 10 of those who perished in the Holocaust from the city of Kolin: Eva Bekova, Ermina Bekova, Kamila Bekova, Amalie Behava, Kamila Blabuliova, Ruzena Bondova, Leopold Bondi, Frantiska Bondiova, Helena Bondiova, and Zdenka Bondiova. For those people, for all of those in our hearts and minds that we are thinking of this Shabbat, we recall them and we take a moment to honor their memory. And if you are mourning someone, remembering someone this Shabbat, I invite you to rise physically or spiritually and join together with all of us as we say the words of the mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgarash shemei Rabbah ve'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon u'vyomechon u'chayei dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala u'bizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'le'olmei amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei dekudesha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata da'amiran be'alma v'yimru amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved, and let us say amen.
And let us say, amen. And let us say, amen. And let us say,
Well, a couple of announcements before we conclude this morning. Havdalah this evening at 7 p.m. with me and Neil. It's sure to be a joy and hilarious, as it usually is. He's very excited and has been working on learning the words to Eliyahu Hanavi. So if you would like to celebrate the end of Shabbat and also witness that, I invite you to Havdalah 7 o'clock here on Facebook and Channel 1. I'm sure it will be hilarious. And otherwise, we have a pretty normal, whatever that means, week coming up. Just a reminder, we are virtual for the foreseeable future. The building is closed, but don't forget that we're still here. There's the email address and the phone number to reach the clergy are on the website. Please use them if you need them. And otherwise, stay tuned for what's coming next. It feels crazy that Hanukkah is a month away. So we're already deep in Hanukkah planning. So, we don't go too long without a holiday. Don't anybody worry. What am I missing, Steve? Anything?
I don't think so, Rabbi.
All right. Well, we're going to end with a song of hope.
We are. This is a song that's sort of been an anthem for us through the pandemic, through these difficult days. It reminds us that as Jews, it's our job to always bring hope into the world, to not only pray for healing, but to work for healing, to pray for peace and ask for peace and work for peace, and to always, always bring blessing into the world wherever we are. And that's what we ask for in this song. There is hope, there is healing, there is peace, and there is blessing, there is hope, there is healing, there is peace, and there is blessing. Let's sing it one more time together. There is hope, there is healing, there is peace, and there is blessing. There is hope, there is healing, there is peace, and there is blessing. When the waters are wide and you cannot reach the other side, should your courage run dry, there is hope, there is healing, there is peace, there is blessing. There is hope, there is healing, there is peace, and there is blessing. What you try to endure when the future's unsure, believe there's something more. There is hope, there is healing, there is peace, there is blessing. There is hope, there is healing, there is peace, there is blessing. Yesh tikva, yesh refuah, yesh shalom, yesh bracha. Yesh tikva, yesh refuah, yesh shalom, yesh bracha. There is hope, there is healing, there is peace, and there is blessing. There is hope, there is healing, there is peace, and there is blessing.
I think that song is a benediction in its own right. And so we ask you, God, Yehi Ratzon Milfanecha, may it be your will that there be hope and healing and peace and blessing. And as we walk into this week, which will be different, we do so with open arms for those that are like us and unlike us, that we do so with understanding and compassion for all. It is the only way that we will turn that hope into peace and blessing. And so we ask, Tatzidenu l'shalom, may our steps be steps of peace. Tadrichenu l'shalom, that we be guided on paths of peace. Amen. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.